Welcome back to MetaCast, everybody. I'm John.
And I'm Maya.
Today, we're putting on our explorer hats.
Yeah.
For a deep dive.
Into the world of Indiana Jones.
Exactly. Indy. The new Indiana Jones and the Great Circle game.
Oh, yeah. So we're looking at a review from Level Up, a Spanish gaming site.
Okay, cool.
And they seem pretty impressed. I mean, they gave it an 8.5.
Wow.
But we want to go, beyond just the score.
Yeah, what's got them so excited?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, indie games have had a bit of a mixed track record.
Yeah, for sure.
So what does this one do that maybe others haven't?
Well, one thing that jumps out immediately is how much they emphasize, that feeling of adventure.
Okay.
It's not just about action, it's about making you feel like you're really on one of Indy's expeditions.
Okay, but every game says that?
Right.
How do they actually pull it off? Give me the specifics.
Well, they call out a few moments that really highlight that. Imagine infiltrating the Vatican archives.
Yeah.
Or exploring, the depths of an Egyptian pyramid on the hunt for, Rye's lost treasure.
Okay, now we're talking. But those are pretty grand set pieces.
Sure.
What about the smaller moments? Does the game, nail the feeling of just being Indiana Jones?
Yeah.
Even when you're not in the middle of some huge action sequence?
It sounds like it does. The review specifically mentions that even the quieter moments of exploration are exciting. And that ties into something else. They praise the level design.
Oh, interesting. So they create a world that's actually fun to just exist in.
Exactly. They say the environments are full of detail and really reward exploration.
Huh.
Which is impressive because they also mention the game is mostly linear.
Wait, hold on. Linear? I thought we were talking about pyramids and Vatican City.
You're right to be surprised. It's not a completely open world.
Okay.
But the individual levels themselves are designed in a way that encourages exploration. They mentioned this one section with a constantly moving train inside the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Oh.
Trying to navigate that while also searching for clues.
Okay, that actually sounds pretty cool. So even within the linear structure, they found ways to make it dynamic and interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's not just about the cool locations or navigating tricky environments.
Okay.
The reviewers loved the emphasis on puzzles.
Yes.
The indie's more about brains than just brawn.
Yeah.
Now, that is refreshing. It seems like so many action-adventure games just rely on combat as a crutch.
Yeah.
To hear they're leaning into puzzles, that's definitely piquing my interest.
Yeah, and they're not just simple filler puzzles either.
Okay.
The review points out that they're well-designed, genuinely challenging.
Right.
And really make you feel like you're using your wits to solve them, like a real archaeologist.
Okay, so far so good. We've got a sense of adventure, stunning locations, and engaging puzzles. What else does Level Up rave about?
Well, they also mentioned the game nails that classic Indiana Jones cinematic feel.
Yeah.
They were especially impressed by the recreation of the iconic opening scene.
Really?
From Raiders.
Wait, seriously? You mean the giant boulder scene? You get to play that?
Yep. It sounds like they made it a playable sequence.
Wow.
And they said it's not just a one-off gimmick either.
Okay.
They felt that cinematic energy throughout the whole game. From the way action sequences are staged to the overall look of the game, it's clear the developers were going for that classic Spielberg vibe.
I'm already picturing those classic shots of Indy narrowly escaping booby traps.
Yeah.
And what about the music?
Oh, yeah.
Did the review mention the soundtrack?
Unfortunately, they didn't go into specifics about the music.
Okay.
But they did praise the Spanish voice acting.
Oh, cool.
Especially Carlos Segundo reprising his role as Indy.
No way. He's the voice of Indy for the Spanish dubs of the films, right?
Exactly. The reviewer said he brings the same gruff charm and wit to the game.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it really adds to the authenticity.
Okay, I'm sold. But I know no game is perfect.
Right.
Where do the reviews say the game stumbles?
Well, the combat system seems to be the biggest point of contention. The review says the first-person perspective, while it works for the most part, makes the combat less dynamic and engaging.
Yeah, I could see that. I imagine it would be hard to capture those big cinematic fight scenes from that perspective.
Exactly. And the review pointed out that the combat relies heavily on melee fighting.
Right.
Which thematically makes sense for Indy, but it doesn't always translate well to gameplay. It can get a little repetitive and button mashy.
So even though it's true to the character, it sounds like they might have missed an opportunity to make the combat a bit more varied and interesting.
It does seem like that. Although the review did highlight a few moments where the combat shines.
Okay.
Like pushing enemies off cliffs or using the whip to disarm them.
Right.
Those moments definitely bring a bit of that Indy flair.
That's the kind of creative approach to combat I'd love to see more of.
For sure.
But speaking of missing the mark, the review also wasn't too happy with the stealth mechanics and enemy AI.
Yeah, apparently there are stealth sections in the game.
Interesting.
Which is interesting, but they said the execution wasn't quite there.
What went wrong? Was it too difficult or just poorly implemented?
It sounds like a bit of both. They said it's meant to be challenging, but the mechanics end up being inconsistent. Part of the problem is that the enemy AI is very basic. It doesn't seem like the enemies react realistically or intelligently to what the player does.
So instead of cleverly outsmarting your opponents, it's more about exploiting the AI's flaws.
That's the impression I got. And to make matters worse, they also weren't impressed with the level design of the stealth sections.
Oh, no.
They felt those areas lacked the same attention to detail and visual flair as the rest of the game.
Well, that's disappointing to hear. I was hoping they'd nail the stealth elements, considering how much emphasis they put on atmosphere and exploration in other parts of the game.
Yeah.
But let's move on to the story.
Okay.
Does the game manage to deliver a narrative that's as compelling as the adventure itself?
That's where the review was the most critical. They said that while the game captures the adventure spirit of the films, the story itself falls a little flat.
What's missing specifically, did the review say?
Well, they pointed out that a big part of the charm of the Indiana Jones movies comes from the characters and their relationships.
Yeah.
Something the game seems to be lacking.
You're right. Indy's adventures are always more than just chases and gunfights.
Yeah.
It's the characters that make us care.
Exactly. And the review specifically said that some of the supporting characters and antagonists feel underutilized. There's a sense that they could have been much more compelling and contributed more to the overall narrative.
It's like they had all the ingredients for a great indie story, but they didn't quite bake the cake properly.
A good analogy. But even with these shortcomings, the review makes it clear that this game has a lot to offer.
All right, so we've talked about the good and the bad.
Right?
What's the final verdict from Level Up? Would they recommend this game?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They say that despite its flaws, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is ultimately a success. They were impressed with the way it captures the spirit of the franchise. They said very few games based on movies managed to do that.
So it's not perfect, but it's a worthwhile experience for fans of the franchise.
Definitely. They said the game's strengths, the sense of adventure, the immersive environments, the clever puzzles, really outweigh its weaknesses.
As well.
And they applauded the developers for trying something different, even if it didn't always quite work.
That's a great point. They're praising the game for not just being a rehash of what we've seen before.
Right.
It sounds like they took some risks.
Yeah.
And while not all of them paid off,
Yeah.
it's commendable that they tried to push the boundaries of what an Indiana Jones game can be.
And that brings us to a question for you listening at home.
Okay, hit us with it.
What does a truly great Indiana Jones game look like to you?
Ooh.
What elements are essential to capture that magic?
Yeah.
Is it all about action and adventure, or is there something more?
It's a great question. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you like to see in a new Indiana Jones game?
Yeah.
Yeah, hit us up on social media. We'd love to hear your ideas. Maybe there's a budding game developer out there listening who'll take up the challenge.
There you go. But for now, it sounds like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is a pretty solid entry in the franchise. Even with its flaws, the review made it clear they had a lot of fun playing it.
And that's what matters most, right? At the end of the day, games are supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
And it sounds like this one delivers on that front, even if it's not perfect.
Exactly. And this review made me think about something.
Right.
They praised it for not being what we might expect.
Right.
Which is interesting. I wonder if maybe clinging too closely to the formula of the films is actually holding indie games back.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
What if a truly great Indiana Jones game actually broke away from the action-adventure mold entirely?
Right. What if it was a more narrative-driven puzzle game, focused on the archaeology, the history, the mystery?
Now, that's an idea I could get behind. It would still have that sense of exploration and discovery, but it would be a completely different kind of experience.
Yeah.
Maybe even a bit slower paced.
Yeah.
Giving players time to really soak in the atmosphere and the story.
Exactly. There's so much potential there to explore different genres and gameplay mechanics.
Oh, totally.
We could have a game where you're deciphering ancient texts.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Piecing together historical artifacts and maybe even managing your own archaeological dig site.
And think of the possibilities for storytelling.
Right.
You could have a game that dives deeper into Indy's past.
Yeah.
Exploring his early days as an archaeologist or even his time as a professor.
So many possibilities. It's exciting to think about what the future holds for Indiana Jones games.
Yeah. For sure.
Maybe this review, with its emphasis on the game's strengths and weaknesses, will inspire developers to think outside the box and try something truly innovative.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
From ancient tombs to the future of the franchise.
It's been a fascinating journey, and as always, we want to hear your thoughts. What do you think makes a great Indiana Jones game? Let us know in the comments on social media or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on this adventure through the world of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those whips cracking.